I want to clarify a few points because I'm rather troubled by what I've heard here this morning. So, to understand this, a senior Government of Canada official came to KPMG and said, "We know you have the qualifications to perform $400,000 worth of cybersecurity assessments, but we're not going to contract with you directly. Instead, we want you to go through this two-person basement firm, which will also take a $90,000 cut, rather than dealing directly with CBSA." Am I understanding this correctly? A senior government official came to you and said, go through GC strategies. Is that correct?
The government official asked us to submit a proposal for the cybersecurity work to GC strategies.
Is this something that you've experienced personally in the past, where a government official has directed you outside of the direct contracting connection relationship to a third party, for lack of a better phrase, middleman, middle company?
Thank you again for your question. KPMG is often asked to subcontract by small, medium and large-scale organizations where they do not have the capabilities to deliver on the specific piece of work or the requirements, and where they feel as though KPMG can deliver the work at a very high quality level. So subcontracting is not unusual for us.
I want to follow up on that, though, but here's the concern. I'm not going to quibble about KPMG's ability to deliver on contracts. Obviously, you're a large, successful firm. There's no question about that. Where I have a concern is that GC Strategies is not an IT firm. They don't have capabilities, period. And so it's not a matter of subcontracting for another like-minded business or similar business. This is a subcontract from someone who had no capabilities. Did this not raise any flags whatsoever that this was being subcontracted, that the government of Canada was asking you to, instead of contracting directly, to go through a third-party, GC Strategies, which had no capabilities to do this contract, which you were qualified to do?
Thank you. And again, as mentioned earlier, at the time we did follow our strict client engagement processes and practices. And at the time of the engagement, there was nothing that stood out as peculiar from those processes and practices that we followed in following the instructions from the government and contracting with GC Strategies on this specific piece of work, and at a time that was unprecedented, and it was an opportunity to help Canadians, and we complied with the ask.
I just think Canadians might be concerned by what seems to be a very cozy relationship that GC Strategies seem to enjoy with senior government officials, where contracts are being awarded through third parties to make this work. We know hundreds of these middlemen type company are being used. I want to address one final point before I run out of time, though, and that's about developing details and the specifics of contracts. Has KPMG ever helped the government draft calls for proposals that you then bid on?
Thank you very much for the member's question, and the answer is no, KPMG has not participated in that process.
And would that be something that would be outside of the normal practice for a firm like yours or any other firm, or ought it to be?
Thank you very much for the member's question. Vast majority of the work that we would do for the government, whether it's federal, provincial, or municipal level, is competitively bid work through requests for proposals. And as I said before, we would not be involved in developing those kinds of qualifications or criteria in advance of an RFP.
Mr. Nader, 3 minutes, 50 seconds.
Thank you, Chair. And there is a lot of odd things going on with this Liberal government, so I'll just leave that there. To Mr. Nijar, how many resources did you personally have from KPMG working on the cybersecurity assessments?
There were a number of resources. I don't have the exact figure, but I can get that to you. No problem. But there were a number of individuals at various different levels of seniority and experience.
And if you could get that information, but to that end, the various levels of seniority and experience, was that information communicated specifically to GC strategies, that those levels of experience of those individuals?
Thank you for the question. So we identified the individuals to the CBSA, and those individuals were on the engagement. And I do not know if GC Strategies were aware of those individuals. I believe they were. They knew the names of those individuals, is my understanding. And those individuals worked on the execution of the engagement.
Can we be sure that the individuals and their experience was correctly identified both to GC Strategies and through GC Strategies to the government? We've heard before about them, GC Strategies, falsifying resumes, falsifying information, and providing that information to the government. Can you be sure that your information was correctly provided to the government?
Thank you for your question. So I cannot speak to the information that GC Strategy shared to the government, but we provided the names and the experience levels and the security clearance levels of the individuals that were going to be on the project, and they were on the project, and they executed on the completion of the work.
Thank you for that, Chair. And in my remaining time, I am going to move a motion that the committee invite Mr. Imran Bashir, KPMG's National Public Sector Cyber Lead, to appear for no less than 2 hours on the committee's ongoing ArriveCAN study, and that the witness be scheduled to appear within 7 days of the adoption of this motion. This motion has been shared with the clerk, and I believe she could will send it out.
In a few, I see a couple of hands going up. I'm going to suspend the meeting just for 3 minutes. Mr. Nader, Ms. Shannon, and then Ms. Khalid. You have the floor, Mr. Nader.
Thank you, Chair. In an effort to move this along, and perhaps I could seek unanimous consent. Obviously, I can't amend my own motion, but I would seek the unanimous consent of the committee to pass the motion and just take out the within 7 days and leave it to you, Chair, to schedule it at. So I would seek unanimous consent to pass the motion, removing the 7 days requirement, and allow you to schedule it.
Okay, I can't call it. There's still speakers, but I hear you on.
I'm asking for unanimous consent.
Oh, okay. Is there unanimous consent to eliminate the time and pass the motion calling this individual in at a future meeting? Any opposition? I am hearing none. I'm going to, just because we're virtual, I'm going to be sure here. All right, I deem the motion passed then with the removal of the 7 days. Thank you.